Okay, so this is my contribution, is to sort of take public choice theory to another level, or add another branch to public choice theory, and to say, let's not just look at democracy and its incentives. Let's look at all of the governments in the world as competitors in an industry. That is, people can sometimes move and choose where to live. It's possible to start new countries, very difficult. You have to win a war or a revolution or secede, but it's possible. So it's much like an industry. Just a really, really, really awful industry, right? I mean, how many industries murder their customers or, take half of their income? I mean, it's a bad industry. And we can look at it, if we think of it as business people analyze industries, we can see why it's bad and how to fix it. So the first problem is that there's a really high barrier to entry. So the cost for a new firm to enter this industry is high. Meaning, if some entrepreneur has a great idea for a better system of government, how does he do it? He basically can't. If you win an election, you still have the same system of government in place. You can try to fight a war, but entrepreneurs don't fight wars. Violent people fight wars, and it's going to be hard to win anyway. You used to be able to head to the frontier. You used to be able to head to unoccupied land with a group of people who thought that your religion or your social system was better and try it out. But you can't do that anymore. And in an industry with a high barrier to entry, you don't expect very much innovation. Like with that computer, I can go start a new website. And so people start new websites all the time. They try many, many different ones. There are many startups. With government, there are very few startups. When the barrier to entry to an industry is high, you don't get startups. Because a startup is a small group of people, and they want to try something really new. And the larger the firms are in an industry, the less innovative there are. I mean, large bureaucracies do not experiment with crazy new ideas. The iPod was not invented by Apple. It was invented by small startup companies that were trying out this new idea, and only when it had been proven by these small companies did Apple, the big company, say, aha, this is a good idea that someone else had. Now let's go do it better. The government industry is an industry where all of the firms are enormous. They're huge. The smallest country by GDP is $8 billion a year. When you have enormous firms, of course you don't get a lot of new ideas. It's simple. The other problem is the lock-in. Like, what is the cost to a customer of switching from one service to another? It's very easy for me to switch websites. I go to the browser and I change the URL. The harder it is for a customer to switch from one business to another, again, the less innovation. I mean, the greatest example is a monopoly. When there's only one business and you can't switch at all, then the monopoly, it exploits its customers instead of innovating and competing and trying new ideas to try to keep its customers. But the higher the cost of switching, the more it's like every business has a monopoly on its current customers. And the cost of switching countries is very high. Some countries don't let you leave, not very many anymore, North Korea. Many countries don't let you enter. And you have to often learn a new language, leave your friends and family, leave your house, leave your office buildings. It's very expensive. So an example of an industry where it's hard for a new company to enter and it's hard to switch is computer operating systems. It's hard to enter because the applications are so important. And you can write a new operating system, but there's no applications. It's hard to switch. Again, people are very used to their old way of doing things on their computer. They don't want to switch. And so you have a very small number of very large firms. You have Microsoft, Apple, and now Linux. And that's it. And some people, again, to go back to this idea that our intuitions about these causes for these things are wrong, people love to hate Microsoft, right? Oh, Microsoft, they're so evil, They get bashed almost as much as governments. But the problem is not Microsoft or that they're evil. People love the Xbox. Microsoft makes this video game player that competes with the PlayStation. Nobody says Microsoft's evil for making the Xbox. The difference, it's not the company, it's not the people, it's not Bill Gates, it's the incentives of the industry. The video game industry is much more competitive. I mean, entry is expensive, but not as bad as operating systems. Switching is expensive because people like their games, but every few years new games come out that are better. They don't mind switching. It's more competitive than operating systems, so Microsoft does a better job. Same company, same people, but different incentives. Incentives matter. All right, so if the problem is that it's hard to start new governments and it's hard to switch governments, then this kind of suggests how we can fix it. We need to add this startup sector for government, this place where people with ideas about a better system of government can go try it at a small scale. And unfortunately, there's not very many ways to do this, right? As I mentioned earlier, if you win an election, I mean, I could get elected president on the try a new political system platform, and there would still be this huge body of laws. There would be the Constitution, there would be all the congressmen. I mean, I wouldn't have power to do it. Secession tends to be pretty large political units still. And again, large organizations are not innovative. And secession is also very difficult. You usually have to fight a war in order to secede. War and revolution, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to start a government business with people who would want to do it by, you know, going and killing a lot of people. That's not what I look for in a business partner, is the violent, bloody spirit. And as I mentioned, the earlier solution for this was the frontier, but it's gone. Every single rock on land is claimed by governments. Even if it's a tiny rock out in the ocean, it extends oil and fishing rights out 200 miles, so they've claimed it. So with this analysis that was set up to make floating cities make sense, admittedly, we see why floating cities make sense. If we can go to a new place where there are not entrenched interests, where there is currently no legal system, that's where a small group of people can try something that's really new and different. And this is an example of, this is combining an engineering design that was done by professional oil platform engineers, and then we did an architecture contest where people could put whatever buildings they wanted on top of the platform. So this basic design is real, but the buildings are not. And this is a hotel resort for 200 guests that cost $120